Today, I want to talk about insulin prices because recently our sitting president, jibber-jabbering Joe Biden, he's been making a big deal about this. He tweeted this earlier this month saying, it costs pharmaceutical companies $10 to make a vial of insulin, yet drug companies can charge families up to 30 times that amount. Let's cut the cost of insulin to $35 a month. Now let's run with this for a second. Let's just assume it's true that it only costs drug companies $10 a vial to make insulin, yet they're charging 30 times as much, so hundreds of dollars for this stuff. You know, what's stopping a competitor, maybe even a newcomer, from swooping into the market, maybe building some factories, building some production plants to make some insulin, and then selling it for, say, $15, $20, $25 a vial? Because those would be pretty nice profit margins. These companies, they could make a killing off the profit margins while also crushing their competitors. So what's stopping this from happening? I mean, what's going on here? Don't we have unfettered, unregulated capitalism in healthcare and medicine? Yeah, to the no, yeah, to the no, to the no. Now, back in August of 2021, last year, I made a video titled How the FDA Saved Americans from Affordable Drugs. As you can see, it's about a 36-minute video. I bring in a lot of receipts, cite a lot of sources. So for those who are new to my channel, you might want to check this out. But basically in the video, I talk about how drug regulations and government intervention are largely responsible for high drug prices in the United States. We have FDA regulations, which have made it difficult and incredibly costly to get new drugs approved. We have a patent system in medicine that's completely screwed up and convoluted, where drug companies exploit various drug laws to maintain monopoly power over certain drugs, and the fact that drug companies and care providers often keep prices high because they expect to get negotiated down by powerful insurance companies and other third-party payers. And we're seeing a lot of this happen with insulin. I have since this video came out, I have gotten some requests to talk about insulin specifically, and we're seeing all of this happen with insulin. According to one report from the Journal of American Medical Association from 2015, talks about how one contributor to the high cost of insulin is the lack of competition. No surprise there. Says currently 3 manufacturers, Eli Lilly, Sanofi Aventis, and Novo Nordisk, account for more than 90% of the global insulin market. They also produce the entire insulin supply for approximately 3 million adult diabetic patients in the United States. For these reasons, the U.S. insulin market behaves differently from the trend in pharmaceutical markets where generic competition results in substantial price reductions after patent expiration, saying that although generic insulins may become available to patients in the United States in the next several years, there are currently no generic manufacturers that produce insulin in the United States market. Report goes on to talk about how the FDA provides a barrier to entry in this area, saying that to expedite generic entry in this field, the FDA should consider not requiring a new full set of clinical efficacy data if the proposed generic insulin can be proven to have similar physical and chemical properties to the reference product in vitro and preclinical studies. Then there's this report from the American Diabetes Association, which also says that another issue raised was the lack of competition in the insulin market, saying that they spoke with manufacturers who want to introduce biosimilar insulin into the market in the United States, who said that increased regulatory burden associated with development, as well as FDA approval of biosimilars, is deterring manufacturers from producing biosimilar insulins. And then we have this report from the Mayo Clinic from 2020, saying that there are barriers to entry of biosimilars. Because insulin is a biological product, similar products that are almost identical to the parent drug are technically referred to as biosimilars and not as generics. Although the FDA has been receptive to biosimilar entry, the process is still long and cumbersome. As a result, there are few biosimilar insulins on the U.S. market. Also talking about how some biosimilars have already been on the market in European countries for years. So this is your beloved regulatory state, guys. Are you proud of this? Don't you guys just love reading about how the FDA saves Americans from competition in the drug market, saves Americans from life-saving medicine that's been available in Europe for years? I guess the good news is that the FDA last July did approve of a biosimilar insulin that's called Semglee. Keep that in mind. We're going to come back to this. The Mayo Clinic report also talks about the issue of patent evergreening, which again I talk about in my FDA video. Talks about how for a drug that was first made in 1921, it is hard to imagine that the insulin is still under patent protection. However, from 1921 to the 2000s, there have been a continued improvement in insulin formulations. Each new formulation provided more reliable control of diabetes, provided more convenience, but also came with new patents. Newer formulations have prolonged the patent life and extended the monopoly on these products to the present day. In addition to prolonging patent life with the introduction of improved analog versions of insulin, pharmaceutical companies have resorted to filing and securing multiple patents on the same drug. For example, 70 patents have been filed for Lantus since the drug was first introduced, which can technically provide more than 30 additional years of monopoly protection. Even more worrisome are lawsuits filed to prevent new competition alleging patent violation and possible pay-for-delay schemes in which competitors are paid money to delay market entry. And Elizabeth Rosenthal also talks about this issue in her book, An American Sickness.
Read a book, read a book, read a motherfucking book. Read a book, read a book, read a motherfucking book.
Talks about how Sanofi used the Hatch-Waxman Act to prolong their patent when competitor Eli Lilly tried to enter the market with a biosimilar in 2014. Going back to Joe Biden's tweet about insulin prices, he makes it sound like these drug companies, they're making the drug for $10 a vial and they are just rolling in the cash, charging families 30 times what it costs to make the insulin. Is this what's going on? Is this what everyone's paying for insulin? The United States Senate Finance Committee published an investigative report in 2019 that talks a lot about this issue. And according to this report, while prices have been going up, in some cases, the amount of money that the company makes has actually been going down. If you notice this chart, this talking about one of the insulins, the KwikPen. You notice the list price. That's the price that the companies sell it for. And the net price, the one down below, that's the price that the company ends up keeping after they pay back a lot of these third parties like pharmacy benefit managers, which we're going to talk about, and government programs like Medicaid. If you notice the price, the price of sales been going up, but the money that they've been making has actually been going down over the years. So what's going on? Where is all this money going? According to this same report, this is what the supply chain looks like in the drug industry. You notice you have all these different players. You have the drug manufacturers and the distributors. And then you have over here on the right what's called pharmacy benefit managers, who are major players in this game. And pharmacy benefit managers essentially serve as the middleman negotiator between the drug companies and distributors and the pharmacies and the insurance companies and Medicare Part D sponsors and government programs like Medicaid and hospitals. Other reports have similar charts showing this. This is a report from the Government Accountability Office. I think it was published in 2019 as well, about the relationship between Medicare Part D sponsors and pharmacy benefit managers. The American Diabetes Association report from 2018 that I referenced earlier also has a similar chart. So as I mentioned earlier, what happens is that these pharmaceutical companies, they keep prices high because they expect that a lot of these other large players like pharmacy benefit managers and insurance companies and government programs are eventually going to negotiate them down. Now, I'm no expert on supply chains, but I imagine that the supply chains for most goods that you purchase are not structured like this because you tend to pay for most stuff out of pocket without powerful third-party payers like insurance companies and Medicare Part D sponsors and Medicaid programs getting involved trying to negotiate the price down on your behalf and on the taxpayer's behalf. Going back to the Finance Committee report, it talks about the role that Medicaid plays in all this. It talks about the Medicaid drug rebate program, which was passed in, I think, 1990 as an attempt to reduce the taxpayer's burden on prescription drugs. Report says Medicaid spending for prescription drugs is largely shaped by the Medicaid drug rebate program, which requires drug manufacturers to enter into rebate agreements with the federal government in exchange for having nearly all of their drugs covered by the Medicaid program. Are you guys getting this? If you're a drug company and you want access to millions of American customers who rely on Medicaid to help pay for their prescription drugs, you have to enter into an agreement with the federal government that you're going to pay them back in rebates, saying that under the program, for each drug administered to a Medicaid beneficiary, a manufacturer must provide a rebate to the state, which shares a portion of that rebate with the federal government. The formula of these rebates is set by statutes and differs for generic and brand name drugs. For generic drugs, the rebate is 13% of the average manufacturer price, which is the average price paid to drug manufacturers by wholesalers and pharmacies. For brand name drugs, manufacturers pay 23% of the average manufacturer price, or they pay the difference between the average manufacturer price and what is called the best price. So sometimes they pay more than 23%. The best price is defined as the lowest price at which the manufacturer sold a drug to any wholesaler, retailer, provider, or other entity within or outside of Medicaid, excluding certain government programs. In this way, the best price requirement ensures that Medicaid receives the lowest price available to any purchaser in any state for the brand name drug. And over the years, these drug companies have been paying a lot in rebates, saying in 2017, Medicaid spent approximately $64 billion on prescription drugs and collected more than half of that in rebates, nearly $35 billion, reducing net spending to just over $29 billion. And this is a pretty common percentage, according to the Kaiser Family Foundation. As you can see, since 2014, Medicaid gets roughly half of this money back on what they spend for drugs at the end of each year. And this report goes on to say that the rebate program may influence drug spending outside of Medicaid by leading some drug manufacturers to inflate their launch prices and avoid setting new and lower best prices for their products. Speaking of launch prices, going back to what I mentioned earlier about Semglee getting approved by the FDA, turns out that a lot of people are not too satisfied with the launch price, including Bob Herman, writing for Axios, an article from last November 2021 titled "The New Generic Insulin is Not as Cheap as You Thought," talking about that while this new drug is offered at a competitive price to other insulins, the list price is still pretty high. And considering that I already found one healthcare plan, the Neighborhood Health Plan of Rhode Island, as soon as the drug was approved, it was offered on the Neighborhood Health Plan's Medicaid pharmacy benefit.
Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs!
Later on in the report, it talks about how rebates have increased for several reasons. Just 3 pharmacy benefit managers, CVS Caremark, Express Scripts, and Optum Rx, now manage 80% of drug benefits for more than 220 million Americans, resulting in manufacturers facing high stakes when negotiating for formulary placement. Pharmaceutical companies are sensitive to the sheer size of PBMs and the resulting product volumes they can affect, which allows the middlemen to extract higher rebates from manufacturers through the use of formulary exclusion tactics. Internal memoranda and correspondences collected for this investigation suggest that the manufacturers seek to avoid, get this folks, triggering Medicaid best prices when developing their bids for commercial plans. And it's not just this report that talks about the Medicaid rebate program and the impact of the best price. A health policy brief from 2017 put out by Health Affairs also talks about this, saying that states, payers, and manufacturers are considering whether the Medicaid rebate and best price system is still effective policy or whether the arrangement unintentionally inhibits new ways to lower drug costs and improve access to therapies. Going on to say that one ripple effect of guaranteeing the best price for Medicaid is that it weakens the leverage of private commercial payers and pharmacy benefit managers in negotiating with manufacturers, in effect setting a floor under prices, saying that private payers argue that they would be able to negotiate even lower prices for patients if manufacturers were not obliged to offer the same price to all 50 state Medicaid programs. The report that I've been citing throughout this video from the American Diabetes Association also mentions this, talking about how stakeholders have noted that the current structure of the Medicaid best price requirements limit the amount of discounts or rebates manufacturers provide in the commercial market. And then Kaiser Permanente in 2020 talked about this, saying that the rebates may discourage manufacturers from offering deeper discounts to private purchasers, limiting potential cost savings for millions of patients covered by their employers or health plans. Going on to say that the rebate amount often serves as a floor on discounts in the private market, restraining competition and keeping prices artificially high.
Whoopsie daisy!
Yeah, gee, guys, I wonder if all this shit would be as convoluted in an actual free market. It's only one way to find out. But going back to the role that pharmacy benefit managers play, report says the Finance Committee found that drug manufacturers increased insulin's WAC, which is just another word for list price, which is mentioned in the previous paragraph. The Finance Committee found that the drug manufacturers increased insulin's list price in part to give them room to offer larger rebates to pharmacy benefit managers and health insurers, all in the hopes that their product would receive preferred formulary placement. This pricing strategy translated into higher sales volumes and revenue for manufacturers. In some cases, manufacturers appear to have been concerned that decreasing list prices would be viewed negatively by pharmacy benefit managers, since PBMs capture a portion of rebate revenue and are paid administrative fees based on a percentage of the list price. Report goes on to say that according to internal documents and correspondence acquired by the committee, Sanofi's intent behind Lantus's price increase centered on its objective to maximize profits, ensure the overall long-term success of its diabetes franchise, and respond to aggressive rebate and discount activity from competitor Novo Nordisk and PBMs. Report goes on to say that information collected for this investigation suggests that certain contracting and business practices may create incentives for PBMs to favor drugs with high rebates and in turn discourage manufacturers from competing to lower list prices. And then, as you'll see, according to this report, the Affordable Care Act made things even more complicated.
No surprise there.
Saying that an internal Sanofi memo detailed the company's view on how the Affordable Care Act changed market dynamics between manufacturers and health plans. The memo also laid out some of the ACA provisions that provided the government additional regulatory power over the private health care market that likely resulted in increased costs to health plans and more restrictive formularies. And yeah, it talks a lot about this. One of the provisions was that it forced insurance companies, the Affordable Care Act forced insurance companies to cover prescription drugs. And on top of that, it allowed insurance companies to exclude certain medications from their formularies, saying that it does provide an excuse for health plans to assert more exclusivity on drug formularies. The Affordable Care Act regulation allows plans to cover one drug per USP category. Medicare requires at least 2 drugs per category. Plans may choose to exploit this precedent, setting government policy as they operate in the non-exchange market in order to leverage more rebates and reduce costs for insurance companies. So it looks like we have the Affordable Care Act forcing insurance companies to cover prescription drugs, thereby making Americans even more dependent on their insurance for prescription drugs, but also the insurance company is allowed to exclude medication and brands from their formularies, which they use as a tactic to extract greater rebates from drug companies who then raise the price of their drug to offer higher rebates to the said insurance companies. This is your beloved mixed economy, guys. Going back to Jibber Jabber and Joe Biden, it's amazing. It is amazing that the government has tried multiple times over the last half century since the 1960s to make medicine more affordable through programs like Medicare, Medicaid, the Medicaid drug rebate program, the Hatch-Waxman Act, and the Affordable Care Act. Yet we're still hearing these horror stories about sky-high insulin prices. And yet the solution that knuckleheads like Jibber Jabber and Joe Biden offer is more government intervention.
Blow it out your ass.
If anything, government intervention in medicine is the culprit. They are responsible for these insanely high prices. Unfettered capitalism is the solution.
Money, 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 money.